What's up, guys? Welcome to my rant for today. I wanted to talk about something that I see a lot of and something every man really struggles with, to be honest. And, here's the thing, is that the reason men struggle with this, and I'll tell you what it is in a second, but the reason men struggle with this is because of our ego. And in a couple weeks, I'm going to start a whole new series on ego, that ego is the enemy. But this is the reason we struggle with this. We struggle with the idea of denial. We struggle with denial about a lot of things. We're in denial about our bodies. We're in denial about our addictions. We're in denial about our kids. We're in denial about our relationship. We're in denial. Denial, denial, denial. Oh, by the way, if you're looking at the video and you see this, I just got a heck of a tan. I was in California for the weekend and on the beach, and I was in denial. I thought I could go and not have to use suntan lotion because I'm already brown. And my wife, who's white, is like, you need suntan lotion, you need suntan lotion. But I was in denial. I didn't need suntan lotion. I'm going to be okay. And now I have a really dark nose, and I had a nice little burn up on the top here of my my forehead. But I was in denial about it because my ego said, I'm brown enough. I'm not going to get too tan, or I'm not going to get sunburnt. And lo and behold, I got sunburnt. But here's the thing. I read these posts all the time from you guys in our Facebook group. I hear it in our clients. And it's so hard for men because we want to believe that our wives wouldn't leave us. We want to believe that our wives wouldn't cheat on us. We want to believe that our wives wouldn't want to hurt us. We want to believe that our kids want to respect us. We want to believe all of these things. But in the end, and not all the time, but in the end, a lot of these things are not true because we live in denial. So if you want to be successful in life, if you want to have a successful relationship with your wife, if you want to have a successful relationship with your kids, you cannot live in denial. You have to drink what I call the truth serum. The truth serum is a raw, unfiltered look at the truth of what is actually happening in your situation, in your scenario, so that you know what to do. Because you can't make decisions in denial. And this is what happens. A lot of you make decisions from a place of denial. You're not actually looking at the facts of what is going on. And I'm here to tell you that that's dangerous. So many of you make these decisions like around divorce, around moving out of the house. I've had guys go, well, I moved out of the house because I thought it was going to be short term and I didn't think things were going to go bad. And then they went sideways and you found out she was cheating on you and moved another man in the house and she filed for divorce and you lose your house in the process because your dumbass moved out of the house. Stop being in denial. Okay? It's not that your wife is evil, and I'm not here to tell you that your wife is evil. I don't believe that. I don't believe any of those things. I'm not here to tell you that your wife is this manipulative, toxic bitch. I'm not here to tell you any of those things. What I am here to tell you is to stop being in denial about the things that are actually going on. So how do you look at the unfiltered truth? Great question. You have to be gut honest with yourself. You have to ask yourself the hard questions. That's right. The hard motherfucking questions. Hard questions like, is my wife done with the marriage? Has she said, I'm done with you in the marriage? Because if she said she's done with you in the marriage, there's a good chance she's done with you in the marriage. And I'm not laughing as it's a trivial matter. It's not a trivial matter. But I want you to understand this because of our denial, we look dumb. We look dumb to our wife. We look dumb to our kids. We look dumb to everyone around us because they're going, dude, didn't you see this coming? Didn't you see what was happening? No, because you were in denial. So the only way forward is to drink the truth serum, to be gut honest about what is going on in your situation, to be gut honest about what is happening with your wife, to be gut honest about what is happening in your job and your finances, looking at your bank account. Look, if you struggle with your money situation, you need to look at your damn bank account every single day because it is the truth of what you actually have. You can't spend what you don't have. Right? It goes that way with your relationship. You can't spend what you don't have in your relationship. You just can't. And if your wife has decided these are the terms, these are the boundaries, then you must respect her. and you must respect her boundaries. And the only way to do that is by drinking the truth serum and understanding where you are at, that, hey, the old marriage is dead. It's time for me to create a new marriage. It's time for me to move on. And moving on looks like me doing me. It looks like me working on myself and putting myself in the most powerful position possible so that if she decides to change her mind, she will come back to a man on fire, a man full of purpose, a man full of passion, a man who is a man of his word, a man of integrity. And then if she doesn't come back, you put yourself in the best position possible to move forward. Guys, stop living in denial.
All right. Welcome to Empowered AF 2.0. That's right. On 2.0, what are we doing? We're going deeper and higher. Our first version of the podcast was all about toxic stuff and marriage stuff, and that's all important stuff. But as we've gotten deeper, we've started to see the need for expanding what we talk about. And so the last couple months, we've been talking about ownership. We've been talking about a lifestyle of leadership. But I wanted to bring back a marriage focus because I met some incredible people recently through a mastermind I'm a part of who serve the same guys that are listening to this podcast right now, and they serve them from a different angle. And so I'm so excited to have this couple on with me, Tommy and Desnekka. Is that right?
How's it going?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. I said it and then I was like, did I say it right? Yeah, exactly. Because I practiced it. Thank you. I said it like 5 times before. I think I was waiting for your last name. What is your last name again?
Taylor.
That's why I said Taylor earlier. So
yes.
Yes, Tommy and Desnekka Taylor. So Tommy Taylor. What a name. That's like a baseball name. Were you ever in sports or anything?
Me?
No.
Yeah.
I'm very uncoordinated.
I mean, that's like it just sounds like a famous name. I'm Tommy Taylor. What's up? You know, like I'm double T.
It is a famous drummer's name. Unfortunately, I can't get the website that I want because he has it, but yeah. But no, I'm never into sports. I love motorcycles, MotoGP, but that's about it.
There's just hope for all of you guys that are not the manly men, because Tommy is not the manly man at all.
Not at all. I'm more bougie.
It's funny though, in this day and age, what is a manly man, right? Because like there is so many different like dynamics now with transgenderism and like identities of like, we don't even know what masculinity is. And that's part of the reason I started this company, was to bring back some of the focus of what a true man is and what an empowered man is. And for us, that looks like being leaders. That looks like owning our shit. That looks like communicating like leaders and doing those types of things. So I digress, but this is about you guys today. I'm excited because I love when I have guests, I get to hear different perspectives. And, you know, we communicated for a little bit before this recording about some of what their vision is. Or actually, we didn't even talk vision. We're going to talk vision in a second. But some of what they do and how aligned we are, you know, because we always want to make sure that the guests that we have on are preaching kind of the same gospel and the same message of empowerment. It just so happens that these guys do it together as a power couple and as a couple that works with couples. So guys, if you're listening to this right now, maybe your spouse is around, maybe she's not, doesn't matter. But pay close attention to the things that they share, especially, you know, this is a man's podcast. And so you're always hearing men talk. But when Desnekka talks, we're probably going to hear some wisdom from a woman's perspective on what it's like to be in the situation that you're in. So make sure you're staying tuned into what we're talking about specifically. And at the end, we're going to tell you a little bit more about them and how you can get in contact with them, so that if your wife and yourself maybe are on a journey to work towards reconciliation, these guys may be somebody that you can connect with. So let's make sure you're paying attention to that. All right, guys. So here's what I want to do is first, just give me a broad overview of what you guys do with couples. And then I want to hear about your story, because it's important that people understand where you guys are coming from and your credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to what we do with couples, we help couples go from roommates to teammates in 8 weeks. And we do that by helping them basically with something we developed called a healthy marriage model. We have a program called Marriage 2.0, and we do that through a healthy marriage model with working on their mindset, then them as a healthy individual, then helping them work on their actual marriage at the same time as the individual. And then we work with the tools. And all of this is important, but a lot of people start with tools. They do things like the love languages, the love dare, the love and respect. They do things like just there are a ton of tools out there that are okay and great and mediocre, but the problem is they don't build any real foundation first. And you need that to be able to for those to even work in the first place. And so that's what we do in a nutshell. I'm
smiling because literally when I recorded my rant, so if you listen to my podcast, I've got a 5-minute rant, and then I have like the actual episode, and then we have our bourbon moment. That's where a couple of my guys, we sit around, we drink bourbon, and we talk stuff. We talk about man stuff. We talk about manscaping, tattoos. We talk about all these things. Anyways, in the rant, literally that I just recorded, I talked about the Love Dare and how, while I think it has a place, it doesn't usually have a place for most of the guys that I work with. And the reason why is because of what you just said, which is that they're already emotionally disconnected. They're already gone. You know, it's this fun marketing movie, you know, this sort of ministry movie. And again, I'm a believer. I'm not mocking ministries, but it was like, it was created for the intention of saving marriages, but it really is more for like the roommate type, you know, where, and there's different levels of that, you know, where it's like, maybe you've lost a little bit in there, and I love it. I love the serving. I love all those things. But at the end of the day, that's not what saves marriages. That's not what creates new and healthy marriages. And that's a lot of what I want to talk about today. So thank you for sharing that. So let's get into a little bit about your story. I know there's a lot there, and obviously we don't want to make this just about you guys and unpacking everything. And I don't think we even need to know all the details, but just if you could start sharing high level what you guys went through as a couple that got you here to this point where you're now helping and empowering other couples.
Yeah, so you got about 8 hours. We're going to go. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. We went through so much. We are high school sweethearts. So we have been together, married for almost 15 years now, together 18. And we have gone through literally just about everything except for death. Multiple affairs on both sides.
So many that we lost count.
Yeah. So that comes with its full set of like triggers being triggered. Triggers are one of like the biggest aspects of trying to heal from anything, because it's like they keep you trapped. And so you have to properly deal with triggers. But then also in the midst of things, like I honestly became like a full-blown alcoholic, like so much so that like I had like the box party Fonto wine or whatever on my bed. So yeah, something like that. Just so I didn't have to get up. I would just sit there and refill my cup. Like, and I lived on like chips, Cheerios, margaritas, and wine. Like that's like, I was full blown alcoholic from like, just like chaos. And then we went through so much emotional, verbal abuse. Like I had completely lost myself, like who I was, to the point of talking to myself, thinking I should just be in a crazy home because that's how I felt.
Yeah. I mean, we went through it was just, I don't know if I can remember everything, but financial abuse, emotional abuse, mental, verbal, physical abuse, just literally like, I can't even, affairs, drug addictions, pretty much everything. I know for me, it was living literally, and you probably get this, but it was literally killing me, like physically. I thought I was going to die. Like I was having, my heart rate was resting between 130 and 160 beats per minute, 24/7. I was having constant, like it wasn't like a panic attack every few days. It was like all the time. I felt like a refrigerator sitting on my chest. I felt like that I was losing hair, which isn't normal for me at the time. I was also very suicidal. I had a gun at my chin 20 plus times, knifed my wrist. Like I don't advocate that whatsoever, but when you're going through what I call hell on earth, literally, I would never wish that on anyone. It makes you kind of crazy.
And I do want to throw out there for the men, because like when we say physical abuse, especially because this is more men listening, it's not okay if your woman hits you. So in our marriage, it wasn't Tommy wasn't the violent one. It was me. And like, people don't really think about that, but like, that's not acceptable. Just because I'm smaller doesn't mean that it didn't hurt. And
she packs a punch.
Oh yeah. And like, it was incredibly toxic. So like, I don't want ever like that to ever be accepted. Just because physically, like I'm smaller than Tommy, that doesn't mean that I didn't hurt him.
Yeah. I did. You know, it's crazy as you guys are sharing this and you're, you know, kind of recounting, this affair, this thing happened, drug addiction. Like most people are probably sitting there going, wow, they're very nonchalant about it. Like, it's kind of like not a big deal. And I don't mean you're minimizing it at all. It's just, guys, if you're listening to that and if you're watching this on YouTube and you're watching their personality or whatever, you can see, number one, they're not full of shit. And number two, this is what healing looks like. Pay very close attention to what true restoration, true healing looks like. Because when when healing interrupts the soul, something new is birthed. And that's what you're seeing right in front of you is this is what it looks like to create a new and healthy marriage. So before we talk about what happened and how they created the new healthy marriage, I'm kind of curious as to like, what was the trigger that got somebody, whether it was you or him, to go, okay, enough's enough. Like, how do we get through this? How do we work through this? Do we want it? Because I mean, like, most people don't survive this. And for some reason, you guys took a nuclear bomb to your marriage, like multiple nuclear bombs, and said, we're going to survive this thing. We're survivors. We're going to fight through this. And now we're thriving. So what was it? What was that trigger for you guys?
For me personally, I've never quit anything. And I don't know what I don't mean to sound arrogant when I say this. I hate quitting. Like I hate it with a passion. Like, and I don't know. It was honestly like, because I was at a point where like I was suicidal and I was just like, I want it to work. I love her. But at the same time, I truly hate her. Like we hated each other to the point where we thought about literally ways to kill each other.
Literally.
And collect.
Yeah. It was like, how can I kill him and collect on his insurance policy that I had just taken out on him so that I could collect? Like,
yeah,
wow.
So
it was at that point.
It's, for me, it wasn't one thing. It was just more of like, God put this fire in my heart and I just couldn't let go. I don't know what it was. I had to fight, and we kept working at all these different things until God just kind of brought it all together in this method that we have now. But
his answer is different than mine. So first of all, so Tommy was on, like, he had divorce papers. He tried to fill it out. It was cute. And they were completely wrong, like completely. Yeah. I'm pretty sure like a kid's birthday was even messed up in there. And so I just tossed them on the floor, but like he had an apartment picked out and everything. And to be honest, like we really were at that point of hating each other. And so if you're not there yet, I'm very happy you're not there yet, but that's where you need to get help so you don't get there. But with that, I actually didn't. I was so mad at him. I was just like done. I was like, this sucks. I hate this. I'm a very strong, independent woman that I can take care of myself. Like, it's not that I needed him. And at that point I was like done. And it got to a point that I was like, okay, God, just give me my out. Just tell me it's okay. Just tell me I can leave. And instead of giving me that, God told me that he gave me scripture after scripture after scripture that he was going to restore, and he was going to take all of our stupidity and use it for his good. Yeah. And I'm not going to lie, I was totally mad. I was like, fine. I was like, okay, God. I was like, if you're going to do this. And then, I started working on myself, and that's where my heart change occurred of like, no, like it can be better. And I just didn't have the right things in place at the time.
So it sounds like a couple things happened here, obviously. Number one, Tommy is basically like, I'm not a quitter. So you better throw 5 more nuclear bombs at me because I'm not quitting. And there was that kind of veracity. I got to ask this, Tommy, would there have ever been one thing where you were just like, I'm done, I can't do this anymore? Do you think you would have ever gotten to that point? I mean, I know you got close with the divorce papers, but do you think there would have been ever anything that would have put you over the edge where you're just like, I can't, I'm done?
Maybe pregnancy from someone else. Maybe. I'm not saying that it's okay, but maybe that.
Yeah.
If there would have been anything, I don't know if I could stay with that, but then I would probably still stay, to be honest, and make it work.
But that's the thing that kind of comes to mind.
Do what?
That's the kind of thing that comes to mind, right? It's like something that's so severe that would have been like really, really hard for your pride, to be able to accept that thing. And the reason I bring that up is because, look, at the end of the day, I think a lot of the men I serve and a lot of the men in our community are like you. They don't want to quit. They're relentless. They're pursuing, they're love daring, they're doing all the things, right? And they're trying so hard. But I have to bring this point up is that every man has a breaking point. And I want to say this is it's okay. Like what we're seeing here is a miracle. Like both of them are bringing faith into this conversation. You guys know where I stand on that. This is a faith type conversation. This was a miracle. This is not an everyday occurrence. Most of you in these situations, you may not have that, right? And that's okay. That's why I'm bringing this up, is because if you're feeling like you're at that point where you've got divorce papers and you're okay with that, like you've come to a place of peace, that's between you and God or whatever belief system you have. It's between nobody else. not me, not empowered man, not any other person between you and him. And you hear this man who had been through everything had at least one thing that potentially would have been that breaking point. And who knows? And I don't say that because I wish that or anything. What I'm looking at is that we're all humans. At the end of the day, we're on a human journey. Some of us were spiritual in that, and we have our spiritual pursuit in that. For me personally, I had my breaking point, and that was the lack of repentance. And when I saw a lack of repentance, I said, there's no more there's nothing else I can do, because when I'm with somebody who lives a life of sin, who has a lack of repentance, I cannot continue in that marriage. And that was, for me, that was the thing I needed to break through. So I appreciate you being honest with that, because, a lot of times people do interviews and they're like, oh man, they're just perfect couple. And it's like, no, there's nothing perfect about this. These are two flawed human beings who just so happened, by the grace of God, in my opinion, were able to get through this. And it just so happened that he chose these two to do what they're doing at a high level. And it's amazing. So I thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. We're very transparent when it comes to these types of things. We try and be as real as possible with people.
Extremely.
So basically, he wasn't willing to quit. And then with you, there was sort of a God moment of where God's like, no, you're not going to do this. And that was kind of from a prayer perspective, your faith perspective. And then you said something very interesting, which was decided to work on yourself. That's a big thing we talk about in Empowered Man. What does that mean from a woman's perspective?
Man, I will tell you, it was very humbling to go through this, because in my mind at the time, he was the problem. Not even gonna lie. It was like, he was the problem because I was codependent, and like there was like, I took care of so much stuff, but with all of that, I enabled him, and he wasn't the leader of our house at all.
I wouldn't even put myself in the category of a bad leader, just somewhere outside of that.
It was really bad. And so like, but I did everything. And like, I was successful at work. Like I was able to completely take care of myself. And so with all of that, I was just at a point of, I'm amazing. And so it was very arrogant. And then I was like, okay, well, obviously like I've done stuff wrong too. Like, let's work on, because I was mean. Sorry. I just got up and started. Like, I know I was mean. Yeah. I said some mean things. And just with that, like looking in, like I had to like adjust. I couldn't control Tommy, but I could control how I spoke. And I will say that like that time frame of where I stood, and like when he had the divorce papers at that point, like, and I was standing, he pushed me to see, is my change real? And that was I think that was like one of my hardest times, but it was an inner, I stopped idolizing the marriage and idolizing Tommy and our relationship. It was no longer about like, I have to have this image of a successful marriage. It was like, no, like I need to be healed and confident and know who I am regardless of Tommy. And so when I took that stance and I started changing to honor myself and to walk in alignment, and because, I really leaned into God, and like, I was like, okay, like, how would you act? Like as a godly woman, how should I be acting? And it did completely flip my life, because I was a very flirtatious, hence all the affairs. I flirted with everyone and anyone. All the time. And so like just adapting my mentality and just growing myself.
Yeah. How much do you guys think, and we have we'll talk about therapy and stuff in a second, but how much of the toxicity in your marriage was a result of your childhood trauma?
Are you asking her that?
Or
both of you.
Both. I didn't have a whole lot of childhood trauma. She did though. It was pretty bad. It was very common for cops to get off the school bus on a daily basis and cops be in the front yard.
Not daily, but cops in my house was not a big deal. Like that was normal. And so like I had a lot of childhood trauma, like being left alone. My parents were divorced. What you don't want to do is take your children and stalk your ex or your person in the process with kids in the car. I went through that. That was part of my was my parents' divorce. I was 4. From 4 to like 7, like I was traumatized with my parents' divorce. It was terrible. Just all the things that we were put through. A lot of it is childhood. A lot of it's the limiting beliefs, the beliefs that are instilled. Because Tommy had stuff, even though it wasn't childhood trauma, but did it come from his childhood? Yeah.
Yeah, it was trauma on a low level. Like I wasn't molested or anything like that. It was just, it was more of like belief systems that were put in place. My
Like
stuff
what?
more had, say that again.
Like what?
So belief systems is money mindset beliefs, different beliefs that like within the marriage that where it became toxic later on, that obviously were very different people. So it caused her upbringing was very different than my upbringing. I didn't have no responsibilities.
Very responsible, not.
I have no responsibilities. I wasn't like by any means wealthy. Like we were pretty poor, but still at the same time, like I didn't have any responsibilities whatsoever. And then anything I did, they just fixed it for me. It was just what it was. And then later on,
No consequences for Tommy.
Yeah, my trauma was more due to I had seizures for 17 years of my life, and I was in special education classes. I had a 1.7 GPA. Like I had, and then one day I just quit all of it cold turkey and the medication, and haven't had a seizure since. But that was more of my issues when I was younger.
What in you do you think attracted her to you? Especially because you guys were young. You guys were young when you got together. You said high school sweethearts, I believe you said, right?
Yeah, 16 and 15.
Yeah. So like what in you attracted her?
I've always been attracted to like the fieriness, strong-willed, independent, like driven, stuff like that, because I don't know, it's just kind of brought out more in me, I guess.
So it challenged you.
Yeah, it was a challenge.
Yeah, I will say that a lot of people are attracted to opposites. I don't think we've ever met anyone more opposite than Tommy and I. So if that's your excuse for why you need a divorce, like that's not good enough.
You can thrive in a marriage where you're complete opposites. We work together all day long.
But so, because I'm very outgoing and extroverted, and Tommy naturally is very introverted.
Yeah.
And it was part of that, just the whole, and we were in the same neighborhood, so we hung out all the time. Like we were friends. Like we went to the same school and hung out all the time.
I mean, other than the physical attraction, there was the right.
Well, that's the thing. So one of the things we dive into a lot with our men is what in you attracted crazy. What in you attracted someone who has these types of issues? And so that's why I was just curious if you had ever thought about that and kind of dug deep into that as to, because when you look at two toxic people, like I was toxic, my ex-wife was toxic. I know in my relationship, because of the father wounding I had, I sought that out subconsciously and found it in my ex-wife. And so her way of talking to me, down to me, beating me up emotionally, all that stuff was validation of what my father already said about me. And so I just really just kept reliving the same pattern over and over again. And then I would push back and realizing I resented her halfway through the marriage and didn't even want to be married with her and stayed with her way longer than I probably should have because of that toxic codependency. So the codependency grew out of that same thing. So just curious if you thought about that and kind of what attracted that.
So, and on my end, because there was extreme codependency from me to him, but with that, it was my dad with that nasty divorce. Like my dad pretty much abandoned me, not my brother, because I do have an older brother, and he always wanted to hang out with my brother. But it was if my brother was not on board or didn't want to see him, I was neglected. Like I literally wouldn't get picked up or have any time spent with me. Like it was always about my brother. And like to this day, my dad has not changed. Like he'll call me and be like, "How's your brother?" And I'm like, "Call him, leave me alone." Like I don't care. And so it was that like the male figure, like I didn't have a male figure that loved me for me. And so like I sought that out because Tommy loved me and like me, like I was genuinely me. And like that's, I found that in Tommy when no one else in my life that was there when I was younger.
Yeah. It's interesting how that works too, because then it's like, and you find that Tommy will take your shit. And Tommy dealt with your stuff and he put up with it for a very long time. Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting how that works. And that's what I'm always looking at in the relational dynamics, because as men, it's like we attract the dysfunction that we're used to. And so if that's what he's used to, then on the other side, you were looking for the opposite of that, which is someone who's going to be able to put up with me, take all my stuff. I can be who I want to be subconscious. This is not conscious at all. This is all things that are patterns and belief systems that are below inside. And it's like you act those things out knowing that he's not going to leave you. He's not a quitter. Like you just said, he's never quit anything in his life. So I know subconsciously if I do this, it's not the end of my marriage. It's not the end. And again, subconscious, this is not to call you out and say you were a bad person or any of those things. But it's amazing how those belief systems form as a child and then are taken into our marriage with all this toxic dysfunction stuff. And I only point all of that out just to show you guys that, again, we talked about at the beginning, this was a marriage that had been recreated. This is a new marriage with new patterns, new behaviors that are not reflected by the old. It's important to see this. This is the only reason I brought this whole subject up, and everyone, they both probably got really uncomfortable as I started asking these questions. But it's just to show that this is the truth behind those things, is that just because you have those patterns and behaviors doesn't mean that's the way it has to be forever. And what the enemy meant for bad, God intended for good, which I could preach on that, right? And that's the thing, right? Is like, even if there was toxic dysfunction in attraction, you were able to turn that into the redeemed version of that. And that I absolutely love. So we got to a place where you said, I'm not giving up. You got to a place where you said, I'm working on you. Tommy, I got to ask, like, what are the things that you felt like you needed to work on? And tell me a little bit about that journey.
Oh man, a lot. When mainly leadership, I felt as at that time that I wasn't even a leader. I say a bad leader, but I don't even put myself in that group. Like I was just horrible. Like I wasn't a good dad. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good leader. I wasn't living my life. I had very low self-confidence because I couldn't keep the promises to myself. Like I was a very, very low point in my life. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the main thing that I wanted to work on was mainly healing, getting past all the stuff between us and becoming the best version of me, the best leader of me, the best, basically high performer, to be able to be and live out the legacy that God designed for me.
Why was that all of a sudden important to you? I mean, you've been living in toxic dysfunction for a while. Like, why all of a sudden?
Honestly, it was just like everything kind of like came together. You ever seen those like animated puzzle pieces that just come together by themselves on like a whiteboard? It was kind of like that. Like everything, it's like all these dots connected over the years. And then after a certain point, I mean, I always wanted our marriage to be great. I mean, who doesn't? But it just never... nothing was never in the right place. It was like we had these bits and pieces that we collected over the years from all these different things. And then one day it kind of all came together and it was like this big aha moment for me, and personally anyways. And then I'm good at systems and seeing things from an outside perspective. And then so I was like, if we fix this and this and this and this, and if we do this, then this will work. And so we ended up doing that, and we worked on all of our issues and worked it out. But for me, it wasn't really one defining moment. It was just the accumulation of, this is it. If this doesn't work, then I'm done, type of thing, because it's killing me.
So what would have happened? What would have happened, do you think, had she divorced you? Do you think you would have worked on yourself?
If she would have been the opposite way around?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have worked on myself. Well, it depends on at what point you ask me this. So at one point I had lost everything. I had lost my business. I had lost my friends, my network. I was living out of my car, pretty much homeless when she kicked me out at one point. And if you ask me at that point, maybe a few days before that, I was having a choice whether to go down a very dark route, basically be a man whore and just hate women. And then, I mean, to be very real, I mean, this is what I was, it's like, whatever. Yeah. Going to get away from Christianity, was going to get away from God, was going to just, you can have the kids, like, all this stuff. Like I was just gone. I was depressed, I was suicidal, and I was in the car. And I guess it would be one defining moment, because at that point, but to answer your question first, when it comes to if she was the one that was doing that, I would probably have worked on myself, because you always want what you don't have. And so if you're the one leaving, it's a little bit different perspective. And so it's like them chasing you versus you chasing them type of thing. And so I worked really hard when she did kick me out several different times.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is yes, I would have worked on things. But then the defining moment for me was I was in my car and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, and I lost everything. And I just leaned into my steering wheel and I was like, okay, I was kind of at a fork in the road in my life. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And I was just prayed before that. I was just asking God to take my life, like just kill me because I don't have the courage to do it myself. And and at that point, I just felt I was leaning in the steering wheel. I felt him put his hand on my back, and that's that moment when like everything just I was like, you got a better purpose for my life. I knew something. It was like he was telling me you're being selfish. I got such a big purpose for your life, and you're going to throw it all away. And so that was kind of just thinking back. I had to think back a minute, but that was kind of the defining moment for me personally.
Yeah. I find that it's, it's not to be dramatic, but there is that defining moment usually for us, especially when it comes to transformation. It's just like when you chose Jesus, there was a defining moment, where it's like, there comes a point where you go, I'm choosing Christ, I'm choosing salvation, I'm choosing these things. It's a fascinating story. I mean, you guys have been through a lot. You've been through trauma beyond trauma. You've created trauma in each other's lives, toxic stuff. But you both got to this place where you said, I need to work on me. I need to get better. Tommy, you mentioned the high performance thing. What would you say is if there's a guy in that situation, especially maybe the destitute situation, where it's like he's just in a really bad spot. We can use words of inspiration. I think what you just said was super inspirational. And I think somebody's going to listen to that and go, boom, they're going to have that moment and that encounter listening to this podcast, even just hearing your story. But practically speaking, what does that guy need to do? What does that man need to do right now practically? I love the spiritual dynamic and we need the spiritual stuff and we need to lean on God, but practically what can he do in that moment, or what should he be doing in that moment?
If he's the one working on saving his marriage, is that what you're asking?
Saving his marriage, or he's in that place of just a fork in the road, kind of like, I don't even know where I'm going.
Okay. You want to ask yourself, I mean, at that point, you probably don't have a very clear understanding of your values and principles regardless, but everybody at least has some vague, blurry vision of it, at least. You want to ask yourself, okay, what aligns with my values and principles, right? What aligns with my beliefs? If it aligns with, if you feel that, no one can make this decision for you, but personally, if you feel that saving your marriage and choosing to stay and work on things aligns with who you are, who you want to be, the man that you want to be remembered for, your legacy, your everything, like that, if that aligns with that, then work on your marriage. I can promise you it's worth saving. Even though you may hate them right now, or it may seem hopeless, like it can be phenomenal one day. And so one thing I can tell you is I'm all for prayer. I'm all for going to church. I'm all for reading the Bible, but so many men just rely on prayer. And when you say practical, the first thought that comes into my head is like, God says, yea, though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not sit, not he carries you, walk. Walking is an action. Therefore, you need to be doing the right actions with a proven successful team that can get you there. Whether that's with someone like us and your marriage is working as a whole with a couple, or someone like you guys, where you're working with the individual man and working on saving things on that end. Like, you need the right guidance. I don't recommend going to your pastor. I don't recommend going to a counselor. Go to someone that has a really good track record and actually has success from it and has action steps. Talking about your feelings is great, but if you go to a counselor, talk about your feelings, get in your feelings, leave with 0 action steps, you're in the same place for 6 months to years or more. And so you need to have real action steps in place. And some men, they say things like, well, I'm just fully surrendering to God. Do you even know what that means? Right? Fully surrender. If you really fully surrender to God, you would know that it says seek wisdom over 100+ times in Proverbs. You would know that it says, it talks about how you need to actually seek counsel, not counseling. I don't suggest that, but seek like guidance from professionals. Like you need that. Trust me, you can get there so much faster by having someone that's actually they can see the outside. Like you can't right now, you can't read the outside of you, the outside of the bottle from the inside. You need someone with an outside perspective. So that's basically the action steps that you need to take. Massive action.
I like that. It's funny because I'm the same way. I mean, I love pastors. Pastors play their part. They have their role. I do think sometimes it's good to get a perspective from a pastor especially if you're not sure about the divorce and, what does the scripture say? And, you kind of want some feedback from there. But it's oftentimes, and I don't know why people don't understand this, but they're not equipped to help you in what you're going through. No. Even if they took some marriage counseling class at Bible school, they're not usually equipped to help you. And here's the other caveat most people don't think about is that they're there to serve the whole flock, not just one of the flock. That means they're there to serve both you and your wife. And so he can't take your side. He can't pick and choose who he works with and how he goes through this, even if your wife is the sinner who's the one who's having an affair, et cetera. So that's kind of that's a big one for me too. And we talked a little bit about therapy and how, in you guys' opinion, and you kind of just said it here a couple of times about counseling and therapy and how you guys don't recommend it. Personally, I look at it as it's a rehashing of old events constantly over and over again, and it doesn't actually get you further into what you want to do. It's kind of like, looking at fake money all day, trying to discern what is real money, and that's not going to teach you. What teaches you is looking at real money, and so that once you see a fake note, it's fake because you've studied the real thing. And you can't do that, if you're just constantly studying the bad stuff. Studying the bad stuff isn't going to help you create something new. So we have to create new habits. Desnekka, we're running low on time. I mean, this is one of my favorite conversations. Honestly, you guys have been phenomenal. I have a feeling we could talk for hours on some of this stuff. This has been really good. I'm glad you took the leap and joined me today. But Desnekka, what would you say to these guys who, maybe their wife isn't as spirit filled, let's just say, as you are, and maybe aren't like seeking God like you were, and haven't had that moment of, clarity, if you will, of working on themselves. What do you say to those men who are like desperate for that, and their wife has pretty much leaned out of the marriage? And they're trying to lean in. They're trying to do the work. What do they do with that? How, what can they do? Is there anything practical they can do with a wife who is completely leaned out and isn't really interested in working on herself and just blames him for everything?
Yeah, so there is a lot that I could go into here, but one of the things, like when your wife is already emotionally checked out, if you just start all of a sudden doing the love bombing, what they're going to do is be like, you're scary because now you're becoming obsessive. So they're going to withdraw. Or if they like start doing all the love task, and it's like, because he did this, he started being nicer and like giving me things and helping,
cleaning, helping the kids. It was the first thing he didn't do.
I was like, seriously, it made me so mad. I was like, now you're going to do this. Really?
It's obnoxious.
I hated it. It made me so mad. And so like picking up after yourself, honestly, and just being like, hey, like, do you need some time for you? Like, do you need some time to go get your nails done, to go get your hair done? Don't promote obviously going out to bars, but just some like true self-care time. Some of the nicest things Tommy did was like draw me a bath and put on some music and like said, I'm going to take care of the kids and do dinner, but I just want you to be able to have some time to just chill. Right. And so doing things like that, where it's just genuine care, and it's not, hey, are we going to be okay? Hey, are we going to be okay?
Yeah. Checking the status of the relationship constantly is a bad thing.
Yeah. So the practical is just one, like you have to work on yourself. You have to.
Yeah.
And true change, not temporary change. And knowing that it's not a light switch. The process isn't going to be instantaneous, because your wife is going to want to know, like, is this true? Because I don't believe you.
Yeah.
It's all just an act. It's
One of the biggest things we teach in Empowered Man is we teach this concept called neutral woman. And that is that when your wife has leaned out of the marriage, she's created a boundary. And that is, she's basically no longer your wife. And most guys, like, it just like befuddles them. Like they don't understand the concept of a boundary. Like men aren't taught boundaries at all, right? So when a woman puts up a boundary emotionally, a man doesn't know what to do with that. He tries to violate it, or he sulks in his ego, right? So for me, a lot of what I've discovered in this process is a lot about ego. It's not about love, and that is a huge sticking point. That's why I'm do a whole series on ego here coming up. But the idea that neutral woman is really about creating a vacuum effect between you and the person, and that is that I'm going to be kind to you, I'm going to be friendly to you, but I'm not going to be your friend. And the reason why, and maybe you, I don't know, because what you just said about like doing the baths and stuff, that's something I would never tell a guy to do. But I hear what you're saying and where you're coming from with that. What we basically do is like you, the first part of what you said, which is picking up after yourself, leading the kids, like, hey kids, let's go to the park, let's go do this stuff, and like really just leading the family and leading things. And I think there comes a place with what you were just talking about, like where if there's some level of openness to the woman, and where, you know, like, but like a lot of these guys are in these like shut down relationships, or especially when the woman is having an active affair. Like we have a lot of guys who are living with a spouse who their wife is having an active affair and they know about it. Like it's some crazy toxic stuff. And so with those guys, we tell them, hey, you've got to go neutral. You can't be her best friend anymore. We have some guys that literally are like, their wife is telling them about the problems they're having with their affair partner, and they're just sitting there taking it in. And I'm like, there's nothing more beta than that I can think of. It's toxic.
It most certainly does depend on, because you can't give like exact to everyone in their situation just for that reason. Like everyone's different.
Yeah,
like,
that's why I want to caveat it.
Yeah.
Different
so
levels to
with
it,
that, you know, but like him doing that, like obviously like we were like in the same house and like there was no current affairs, and just kind of like, it was just more of like, I'm just going to do something genuine for you. And that's just kind of like, hey, there you go. Like it's just self-care time. Because a lot of what happens is like women, especially if there's kids involved, they have put themselves last for so long that that's their breaking point, that they're tired of not taking care of them. And they're just looking for, what will life be like and will I matter?
they put their identity in the roles of wife and mom.
And so when he did create that time, that was like, he took care of the responsibilities and gave me time for me. Like that was a benefit.
It was a very small thing that
Oh yeah, very small. Like that most
like,
certainly wasn't like a fix it situation.
No.
Yeah.
But for sure, like no one should have to sit there and talking about an affair like that. Boundaries are vital because you have to be a healthy individual first.
And expectations.
Yeah. Well, guys, like I said, I mean, I feel like there's so many topics we could just like riff on for hours. But unfortunately, this podcast is coming to its close. What I want to do is help guys understand how they can get a hold of you, number one, and maybe like an overview of like one of your core programs, just so they have an understanding of how you work with couples.
Yeah. So the way you can get a hold of us is basically you can just go to tommyandesnekka.com. Tommy, you already know how to spell that, but Desnekka, Desnekka, tommyandesnekka.com. Yep.
Yeah, 2Ks.
2Ks.
And we'll put it in the show notes below too.
Yeah. And that'll give you access to a free training we did for couples on how to save your marriage and reconnect with your spouse without having to go to counseling or therapy. And so it'll give you the action steps and a rundown of our program, but just high level here. I could go into this for 30 minutes, so we don't have that. But when it comes to, when it comes
30
into,
seconds.
when it goes to like basically like the overview of our program, it's Marriage 2.0. We help you go from roommates to teammates in 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. We have a 95% success rate with what we do. And we help you by using a healthy marriage model. So we have the bottom, of course, we're based in Christianity with everything we do. But if you look at a pyramid model, the bottom, we have a foundation that is built in mindset. We have to work on your mindset first, because mindset literally dictates everything in your entire life. Decisions you make, your belief systems, everything. And then we also have to work on you as an individual next. But you don't have to do these completely far apart. Work on you as an individual, becoming a healthy individual. And then same for your spouse, right? And then also in week 4, we work on you in your marriage and help you communicate clearly and effectively. The marriage section helps you understand how to have a healthy marriage as well. And then the tools is last tools is something that we incorporate throughout the whole program. But that's basically like kind of a rundown of the whole thing.
And we do coach together. And then we also so you have access to us, but I mainly coach the women. He mainly coaches the men, but you have access to both of us, which is a great benefit. Cause a lot of times it's like, I just need like a woman's perspective. Cool. Ask me. My ladies can talk to Tommy as well. We just do it obviously in a group chats for boundaries for us and for everyone. But like we coach together.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, guys, I so appreciate you coming on. Definitely a good surprise to me. Wasn't sure. You never know what you're going to get sometimes. And this has been huge. So I'm thankful for it. So we'll put the actual website, TommyandDesnekka.com, below in the show notes. Feel free to reach out to them there. Listen up, guys. We appreciate you here at Empowered Man. If you're wanting to work on yourself, if your wife is wanting to work on herself, and you guys are ready to do this together, this could be a good opportunity for you. So go check out TommyDesnekka.com. If your wife is leaned out completely and is not willing to work on herself right now, then I definitely suggest you book a call with our team, empoweredman.co/book, empoweredman.co/book, and let's get you started in your Empowered Man journey. All right, till next time, we'll see you.
Welcome to the Bourbon Moment. Join your host, M. Sizzle, J-Dub, and Mandrew as they sip on some bourbon and spit some truth. Welcome to the Bourbon Moment.
I think it's interesting. It seems like it's a more difficult, or it's a more bitter pill for the parent to swallow, their child being perceived as rejected, than the child actually receiving that rejection. When, man, that's a part of it. And I hear you there. There was a time when, so to add on to that, my mom was my coach when I was in soccer at one point, which was a wild experience, because I got to see firsthand that although I was her son, I did not come first when it came to her being the coach. And it was a powerful lesson for myself to learn, because I'll never forget when my mom pulled me out of the game. Because, man, I'll be honest, there was a guy that was picking on someone that was small on our team. And I was the goalie. And anyone who knows anything about soccer knows that the goalie can have some physical contact with people as long as I'm attacking the ball. That's the rules. As long as I'm attacking the ball and not attacking you, I can't be fouled if you're inside my goalie box. And so what I did while this guy was coming into my goal box, I ran right at him and I dove at his feet, which tripped him. He flew over me. I got a yellow card. My mom pulled me out of the game because I was mad that he picked on the younger and smaller kid inside the game. It didn't feel right. But then to have me be met with, "You're taken out of the game" by my mom, man, I remember being so frustrated. And at 12 years old, you know, those like Gatorade coolers, man, I flipped one of those over with all the Gatorade in it. Like, I was so fucking dramatic. And I remember my mom bringing it up to me later on, and she told me verbatim, "You need to learn a lesson in what it's like to be rejected, because your mom is not always going to be your coach. And I think when you get rejected in high school, if you don't make the team, then that's going to be a lesson that you get to learn then. But I think you need to understand now that just because I'm your mom at the end of the day, but right now I'm your coach." And I'll never forget that. And I remember her pulling me out of the game, and I respect her for that now, because in retrospect, you're showing me that just because I'm your son does not mean I get special treatment. Yeah. And I think that some parents, if they approach that as their kids are in sports, like, look, it's your kid's job to make the team. But by you challenging like the administrator or the person that is saying if they're a fit or not, I think it's the parent's ego coming into play. Yeah. Like, I want my child to be a fit so badly. I'm willing to do what we need to do. I mean, we saw the whole scandal that happened with all the admissions. Like, you guys, did you see that? What happened with all the parents in the admission scandal? And like, man, you had parents like utilizing their network to get their kids inside these schools. And I feel like it's the same thing, just at a smaller level when it comes to this hockey team and other sports teams. And I think if parents could be okay with their children being rejected, and children see that, man, being rejected is a part of it. Because if you're just given everything, it doesn't feel good. I feel like it ties into everyone getting a participation trophy. I hate that.
Yeah, I know. With our league, they're like, you pay $11 and you pick out the trophy you want, and like every kid gets one. And I'm like, fuck that shit. We're just not doing a trophy. We got two teams in our league.
My brother break trophies before because he was like, this is crap. I don't want this 9th place trophy. And I've literally seen him.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
okay.
We talk about it in sports, but it's everywhere, right? And Joey, I think you hit it on the head. It's number one, it's ego, and it's also not wanting to see your kid in pain. And we're all fathers. 100% we don't want to see our kids in pain, right? Like that's one of the hardest things to do. But also at the same time, we need to put ourselves away and parent them to run through their emotions, figure them out, that they can figure it out themselves instead of trying to protect them from this and create this bubble. And I'm sorry, that's what's happening with the fucking media too.
Yeah.
Depending on what bubble you're in, no matter which bubble you are, you're getting protected by your bubble because you're not willing to listen to somebody else, or you're not willing to be able to take the perspective and work on it yourself or think for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what comes up to add on to that is we have this societal framing of if it's not our viewpoint, it's wrong.
Yeah.
It's wrong. If it's not the thing we agree with and we know for sure this is my belief, if it's anything outside of that, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And whether or not it is or isn't, I think it's healthy to be able to at least accept someone else's viewpoint, because that's the thing about being human is I'm going to have differing views from you and Mark, although a lot of our things do align. That's a part of being human. And that's deeper than nature versus nurture. And I think sometimes people forget that. And the example is, man, my brother and I were raised by the same woman. We've had a lot of the same experiences, nurturing wise, but the nature that we grew up in, I mean, was completely different. And we're completely different people, but we're still very alike in many ways. And I think we get commonly stuck in the nature versus nurture when there's so many more layers to that. And I think being able to appreciate someone else's point of view and being able to accept rejection is something that everyone could learn from, whether it's being rejected from a sports team, being rejected by a significant other. I mean,
well, it's the thing that we tell our guys, right? It's like, if you're getting rejected by your spouse, the thing that's in the way is your ego. It sucks. It hurts. But like, you have to be able to admit that you go, like the thought of, how dare she leave me? How dare this person not want to be with me anymore? That's our fucking ego getting in the way.
Thanks for joining us on the Bourbon Moment. This is your host, M Sizzle. I've got Mandrew and I got J Dub, and we are out. We'll see you next week.